Greetings and salutations. This is a video about audio. We're going to talk about the Audio-Technica 3472P Phono cartridge. I picked one of these up just a couple of days ago and I was really impressed with it. I actually had no intention of doing a video about it when I bought it, and then I listened to it and I said, this is worth talking about and sharing on YouTube. So I realize that this sort of thing isn't for everyone, but if you're like me and you're into records and turntables and you especially like vintage Technics turntables from the 80s and the 90s and linear tracking turntables that featured this T4P style cartridge, then this is going to be a real well of information for you. At least I hope so. And I couldn't really get a good picture of this cartridge, no matter how hard I tried. So this is the best that I could do right here. I don't really have a dedicated camera anymore. I use a phone. It doesn't focus very well. The color's off, all that stuff. But you're going to get an idea here. And I even looked online to see whether there was stock photos. None of them were any good or any better than what I got. So my apologies for that right up front. I also want to say that some of the information I'm going to present in this video is me making assumptions and just trying to fill in some blanks that I can't find direct confirmation for. So if I get something wrong or if I have my timeline out of order, then, and you know better, feel free to correct me in the comments. Some of this is just me guessing. So, if you watched my last video, I talked about this lovely acquisition. I have been enjoying this turntable a whole lot over the last month. This is a Technics SLQD33, and this particular turntable is the cream of the crop of the automatic Technics turntables that featured the T4P tone arm. It's a later model, was made from the late 90s right up until 2000, as near as I can tell. And I bought this refurbished, and the fellow who refurbished it did an absolutely fantastic job. It's in mint condition, has all new capacitors in it. It's ready to rock and roll for another 20 or 30 years. If you want to see that video, I'll put a link in the description down here. You can take a look at it. So in that video, I talked about the M105E Shure cartridge that came on that turntable, and we went off into that a little bit and talked about it. And I said that I was going to be looking for replacement Stylus for that cartridge to see if I can keep it going and all that stuff. Well, a direct replacement for the Shure M105E is made of unobtainium. They simply don't exist. However, there are cross-references. The M104 Stylus works, or rather the N as in no, N104, works, fits. I bought one. The one I got was messed up, didn't work, sent it back. There are some aftermarket styli that are available that are a close fit, but they're not exactly the same. So while I'm looking at all of this, I end up jumping on to LP Gear's website, and they are advertising the 3472P for sale. And I looked at it, and I skipped it over, and then I got to thinking about it, and I said, I really want to buy that cartridge. I want to hear what it sounds like. According to their propaganda on the ad that they had on their page for the cartridge, it is a better cartridge than the later model Audio-Technica 3472P. The other thing about that is just the number, 3472. Audio-Technica for many years sold a line of replacement styli for this type of cartridge that was the number. We'll talk about that later on in the video. So I knew that there was a 3472 out there. So I'm making an assumption that this is the base model that started out this particular style of cartridge, or at least became the base model later on. This type of bullnose cartridge, they go way back to the early 80s. I know because I remember seeing them. About 1986, I bought an Akai turntable that had a T4P tone arm on it, and it had an Akai branded cartridge on it, but you could look at it and tell it was an Audio-Technica like 3472 body. And that was a good cartridge. I actually posted a video about it. I was able to get a hold of another one and do a video about it a while back. These cartridges are very similar, but there are differences in the bodies, and we'll talk more about that later on. But all of the styli are totally interchangeable. So if you have one, you can put it on another as long as it looks the same way. But let's concentrate on this cartridge and what makes it kind of special. So, like I said, I saw it, I skipped past it a couple of times, and then I finally went back to it and said, I really want to hear what this sounds like. And I have no affiliation with LP Gear. I just happened to buy it from them. They're very nice folks, and they have a lot of neat stuff on their website. And here are the specifications for this cart. So we'll start from the top. Frequency response is 20 to 20,000. Well, they all say that. By the way, that's a useless number unless you have some sort of way of knowing whether it's up or down a couple of dB and where are the peaks, where are the valleys. It's just skip that one. Output voltage is pretty high for a P-mount cartridge of this kind. It's a very high compliance cartridge. And high compliance cartridges like this usually don't have big outputs, but the coils that are in this must be pretty sensitive because they boast a 5.0 millivolt output, and it does it. This is a loud cartridge, and it's very dynamic. Channel separation, or rather balance, we'll talk about separation in a second, 1.25 dB. Now that number is better if it's lower. So 1.25 dB would mean that the channels, if you had a perfect record that was in absolute perfect mono, let's say, and it was just playing a tone and you could measure it, it would be within 1.25 dB on either side of matching each other. 1 dB of difference from one channel to the next, you're probably not going to be able to hear that unless you have a pair of headphones on. And then that's a maybe. So that's pretty close to the edge of the perception of loudness of human hearing. 1 dB is usually the limit at which somebody can tell that the loudness has gone up or down. And so that's pretty cool. Channel separation. At 1 kilohertz, it's listed at 26, and at 10 kilohertz, it's 16. I believe it. Actually, I think it surpasses it because this cartridge does have a super wide stereo image. Vertical tracking force, 1 to 0.115 grams. Of course, 1.25 is the standard tracking force for T4P. They say it's a bonded round shank, 0.6 millimeter conical, not millimeter. Let me make sure I get that correct. I will get corrected in the comments. A mil in this case is 1/1000th of an inch, not a millimeter as in, 1/10 of a centimeter. And the cantilever construction is thin wall alloy tube, recommended load resistance 47 kiloohms. Those specifications, they're pretty basic, but I think they go back to the original cartridge. And this thing sounds good. They were not lying on their webpage. They said it was better than the 3472P. They said it was better constructed. They said the later model 3482P was cost restrictive as far as quality was concerned, that they were cutting costs, and this one they didn't. I think they're telling the truth because this is one fine sounding cartridge. As a matter of fact, this is probably one of the best sounding quote unquote 3482 style Audio-Technica cartridges I've seen. By the way, I've got information that leads me to believe that for AT themselves in-house, that this cartridge style is designated as 213, but I don't have confirmation on that. I do know that the AT3600 is considered the 211 in-house at Audio-Technica, so that may or may not be true. If you know that for sure, would you put it in the comments, please, and let me know. This thing just sounds wonderful. I mean, it knocked me off that Shure cartridge, and that Shure cartridge is not bad at all. When I put this on, I didn't want to put the Shure immediately back on, so that says an awful lot about the amount of quality that's coming out of it. It's big and bold and dynamic, and I mean, it sounds as good in some ways as like my current Audio-Technica VM530EN. It is on that par with the amount of clarity and the quality and the separation. And I really love the fact that it has that 0.6 mil conical stylus, because I can play any record with this. Plus, getting a replacement stylus for this style of cartridge is easy. They made a gajillion of them. There are tons of replacement styli. We'll look at that coming up in just a little bit. We'll talk more about replacement styli. So I'm not worried about being able to find a stylus for it down the road. Now, there's one thing here that I have to point out, and this is just for the LP Gear site. So if you're going to run off and go buy one of these, they say down here that it comes with a separate adapter for 1/2 inch mount. It says accessories included are screws and nuts. Okay, I didn't get that. All I got was one screw and a nut that you would use to attach it to the tone arm, the locking screw for a T4P tone arm. I didn't actually get the adapter. There are plenty of adapters online, and Audio-Technica and Shure have sold cartridges, so has Ortofon, that have these. And what it is you can take a P-mount cartridge and then you can mount it to a 1/2 inch regular tone arm. It doesn't really ever work that well, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, when you use one of these adapter kits to put a P-mount cartridge on a regular tone arm, you end up with a very tall cartridge, probably about 20 millimeters tall. And this time I do mean millimeters and not mils. And most tone arms designed in the last 30 years that do not allow you to adjust the height of the tone arm are set to accept cartridges between 17 and 18 millimeters, somewhere in there, and that's where most of them fall. So on some turntables, especially with shorter tone arms, you can end up where your P-mount cartridge is riding sort of nose up, and it doesn't quite line up. The VTA's not right. The other thing about it is that P-mount cartridges are designed to be very high compliance. They are looking to be mounted on extremely low mass tone arms. That's a T4P tone arm. And if you think of like a linear tracking turntable, or like the T4P tone arm that's on a Technics, or a T4P compatible that would be on any other brand, they're always very light little gossamer arms. And that's because they are designed to work with this high compliance cartridge. Most 1/2 inch tone arms on turntables these days are looking for a medium compliance. If you're talking about like a Technics SL1200 turntable, any of the Project line, or any of the Riga turntables, those arms are looking for medium compliance, which would be a tracking force somewhere between like 1.75 grams and 2 grams. And most cartridges sold today, that's where they track. 1.8 to 2 grams. Pretty much everybody is going for that medium compliance. That's what's in style right now. So if you take one of these cartridges, and even if you are able to adjust for the VTA and you get it all lined up and everything, you may not be very happy with the performance simply because the cartridge doesn't match the tone arm. And that is an issue. So this one was really impressive. Like I said, I couldn't believe how good it sounded. These cartridges in general sound good. None of them sound horribly bad. And they're dirt cheap on the internet because it's unfortunate, but nobody makes a T4P compatible turntable these days. But Technics made millions of them. And they sold these consumer level turntables, and many other manufacturers used the T4P standard. Pioneer did. Akai had T4P standard turntables. Radio Shack had them realistic. Later, Optimus made several linear tracking turntables later that were awesome, well into the 90s, that used this format. So there's still demand for these cartridges, which is the reason why there is at least a few versions of this cart still being made. So let's talk about that real quick. This is what the cartridge looks like. I couldn't get a good picture, like I said earlier, but this is the basic side view of one of these 3472 style cartridges, or 213 if that's the correct number. I want you to notice something here. Down here, if you look at the bottom of your screen where you see it says Audio-Technica, you can just make that out on the stylus. And then below that, you'll see this circle right here. I have my mouse pointer right over top of it. that is a very cool feature that Audio-Technica had for a period in time on these cartridges, and that was that you could just look at the bottom of the cartridge, and if you saw that circle, you knew it was a conical stylus that was on the cartridge. I am assuming that what we're looking at here is a AT3472P, which has a carbon fiber cantilever and a 0.7 mil conical stylus. And so therefore it says it's conical on the bottom. If you have a mild elliptical, a 0.4 by 0.7, then you would have an oval. If you had a more extreme elliptical, like the 0.3 by 0.7, then you would have an oval with a dot in the middle of it. And that way you could just look and see what kind of stylus you had on the cartridge. Very cool, huh? So I have some information that I want to pass along. And once again, I just want to say that some of this is just me guessing. And if you know better, please feel free to put it in the comments. I'm just going on my experience over the last 30 years or so. So the Audio-Technica 3472 bullnose style P-mount cartridges include, these are the ones that are made right now. Audio-Technica has two that they sell on their website, brand new right now. And that would be the AT3472P, which is a 0.6 mil conical with a carbon fiber cantilever. That is the successor to the 3482P, which they don't make anymore. Very similar cartridge. And then the other one they sell is the AT85EP with a 0.3 by 0.7 elliptical and an alloy metal cantilever of some ilk. I don't know whether it's aluminum or whatever. On the Audio-Technica website, they have the most piss-poor specifications for these cartridges I've ever seen. Like, they're saying that the AT91CP has a separation at 1 kilohertz of 18 dB. I don't think that's true. I don't think they actually measure this crap anymore. I think they just put up whatever on that site, because I'm having a hard time believing that they were making a cartridge in the same body that was capable of 26 to 29 dB of separation, and then now the later version goes down to 18. Could it possibly be that bad? I don't know. I don't own these cartridges. I don't know what they sound like. I know that the specifications for the AT85EP, which I'm assuming is a replacement for the AT92 ECD, which we'll talk about here in a minute, they're talking about 20 dB of separation. The AT92 ECD, that was listed at 29 dB of separation, and it did it. Believe me, I own that cartridge, and I wore it completely out. I had one of those, and I played it until it wouldn't play no mo. So I know what it sounds like. So I don't know whether their specifications are BS or whether the cartridges really are that bad these days. Who knows? So let's talk about some of the discontinued cartridges. The first ones that you might see pop up are the AT1001 through the AT808 Studio Reference Series. I've seen these out in the wild. They sometimes pop up on eBay. You might find an old turntable. This was a higher-end version of these cartridges that had really nice styli on it. The 101 had like a conical, and then the 808 was microline, which is Audio-Technica's super high-end stylus with the like a vivid line edge, that sort of thing. And those are out there. I don't know if the bodies are significantly different. There is some difference in the bodies from cartridge to cartridge. I know for a fact that the 3482 body sounded different than the AT92 ECD. You got better stereo separation from the 92 ECD regardless of what stylus was in it. So there are differences in the body. So then there's another series, and these are really fine cartridges. I've had these before as well. It's the AT301, which was a 0.4 by 0.7 conical, and the AT311P, which was a 0.3 by 0.7 conical. And then I think there was also a 300, but I'm not really sure about that. I was trying to look for information and I couldn't track it down. I think the 300 is the conical version, maybe, of that, but I haven't seen one. So, been a long time since I saw that. I'm going off a memory that's probably 10 years old. So I don't know whether they're out there or not. And then I also talked here about the 3472P and the AT82 ECD. The ECD was available up to not very long ago. I mean, there's still some out there in the wild, and this was a cartridge that came in a blister pack, and they sold it for about $30 to $40, and those things were amazingly good. Just especially the stereo separation. They sounded every bit as good as like a AT120 half-inch, because I had both of those at the same time, and that's been many years ago. And I burned up that ECD, and not only that, I actually bought some advanced styli for it. Like I picked up a Shibata, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So let's talk about replacement styli. Now, they made a bajillion of these cartridges, so they're all over the place. If you put 3472P or just 3472 in here, or any of these numbers that you see, you're going to get a whole lot of choices for replacement styli. Let's talk about the styli that are available from Audio-Technica. And they are still on the website. They are still making these styli, and they're still selling them. Now, I don't know whether they're just selling off the stock that they have, or whether they're actually making these. It didn't say, and I don't know. But basically, it's the ATN. That means they're just talking about the stylus and not the cartridge. 3472C, which is a 0.6 mil conical, and that has a very nice aluminum cantilever or a metal alloy of some sort. Good sounding stylus. The 3472P that I have now, that's probably what I would replace it with. And then they have one that's a little bit more difficult to find. I don't think they made quite as many, and that's the 3472BE. That is a 0.4 by 0.7 mil elliptical that originally came on the 301. And that is a mild elliptical stylus, and they pretty much don't make those anymore. That used to be the same stylus shape that the old AT95E half-inch cartridge had. And there are many people out there who actually prefer that shape. That is a very fine-sounding shape. It's a good compromise between a hyper-elliptical, which you can have alignment issues with and actually get more distortion, not less, and a conical. So some people are really big fans of that. And then there is the ATN 3472 SE. That's a 0.3 by 0.7 mil elliptical stylus. Very high quality, very nice sounding stylus. They are still available on the AT website, plus at a lot of other places that sell these things. And of course, you have to remember that when you go to some place like LP Gear or you go to turntableneedles.com, they're going to have their in-house brands. And there are some really, really nice aftermarket upgrade styli for these with all kinds of different things like hyper elliptical. I put Vivid Line in here. I bought a Shibata stylus and put it on an AT92 ECD, and that was really nice. I am not a huge fan of the advanced shapes on styli, and I've talked about that in past videos, mainly because I collect a lot of 45 RPM records, and it's really not a good idea to play a polystyrene record with an advanced stylus shape, anything above 0.3, 0.7, because then you get into a situation where you may be damaging that softer polystyrene. I'd even hesitate to play that with like the Shure with the 0.2 by 0.7 stylus that I have now. I just don't feel 100% comfortable with that. 0.3 by 0.7, yeah, it's okay. Hitstown USA here on YouTube did a video about that. He did some research on that, actually played some 45 styrene with a advanced shape stylus, and he confirmed, yes, it's true. Over time, you're going to start cutting a new groove in that record. On one of my videos about this, somebody took issue with what I said, and they said, well, how can a conical with a smaller contact area be kinder to records than, let's say, an elliptical or an advanced shape because of the larger contact area? And he says it's simple physics. This is what the guy said. And I explained to him, I said, simple physics goes out the window when you start talking about a modulated groove. And that stylus tip, that diamond, is being thrown back and forth at 12,000 times per second with incredible G-forces on it that are measured in the tons. So we're not talking about just a diamond going through a smooth groove. No, that modulation makes a difference. And 0.7 or 0.6 mil conical, even tracking at a high tracking force like 3 to 4 grams, is probably going to do less damage than any other shape, especially on polystyrene records. And there's a lot of research to back that up. Anyhow, I hope you found this video somewhat interesting and maybe useful. I know that it's a lot of deep, dark, esoteric information, but it's something that, I like to talk about and play around with. And like I said, I wasn't originally going to do a video about this cartridge. I don't particularly like doing videos about discontinued products because then it makes it hard for you guys to get it. I kind of feel bad about that. But in this case, there are enough out there that if you found one on eBay, for instance, that somebody was selling, even if the stylus that was in it was messed up, if you got an AT3472P stylus, which is currently available, and you put it in that cartridge, you're like new again. One of the nice things about Audio-Technica cartridges, all of the suspension is in the stylus. So the bodies theoretically last forever because there's nothing moving in there. It's just a coil that's, with wires stuck to it. That's all it is. Whereas you talk about other types of construction for cartridges like a Shure or a Stanton or even a Gold Ring cartridge, something like that. There's suspension that's in the cart itself. Whereas Audio-Technica puts it all in the stylus. So when you replace that stylus, you replace all the suspension. Wonderful design. Beautiful design. Speaking of gold ring cartridges, I got a line on a Tonar gold ring P-mount cartridge, which I'm on a waiting list to get if they restock them. If they don't, I'll never get it. But if I get one, I'll probably do a video on that as well because they're very cool, and I hadn't seen one in many, many years, and I was actually kind of surprised to see that they were still made. If I get that cartridge, I'll do a video about it, but I don't think I'll get it. I'm not sure if they're making them anymore. We'll see. It doesn't say that they're discontinued on the website, but there you go. All right, thank you for watching. I hope this video was useful to you, and I hope you enjoyed it. I can't wait to hear your comments. Love to hear from you. And we'll do it again soon. Thanks.